Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive. Today, we're going to a pretty dark place, actually.
Oh,
Yeah. We're looking into the Bever family murders.
the Bever family.
It happened back in 2015 in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma.
Oklahoma. Okay.
And we're using this article from True Crime Time. It's called The Bever Family Murders That Shook Broken Arrow.
Interesting.
So picture this. You've got this family, 9 people, living a totally normal life, from the outside.
Right.
But behind closed doors, well, something really, really bad is going on.
Sounds like a classic setup for, well, for trouble. Some kind of pressure cooker situation. You have this isolated family unit. They're kind of cut off from everything else.
Yeah, exactly. The Bevers, the parents, David and April, and their 7 kids, they were known to keep to themselves. Pretty reclusive. And April homeschooled all the kids.
Yeah.
So not a lot of interaction with, the outside world.
Makes sense.
But here's the thing, though. They weren't completely cut off, right? They had technology, computers, the internet.
That's always a bit of a wild card, isn't it? Technology. It can be a window to the world, but also, well, a door to some pretty dark places.
And that's a huge part of this story, especially for the 2 oldest sons, Robert and Michael.
How so?
Well, for them, the internet became like this echo chamber for their, fascination with violence and killers,
Yeah.
infamous ones.
Ah, I see where this is going.
Yeah. And then there's April, the mom. She was on Reddit.
Reddit.
A lot of it was, typical mom stuff, homeschooling kids. But then you find out she married David when she was only 15.
15, wow.
He was 26.
That's quite an age gap.
Yeah, it definitely makes you think about, well, the whole family dynamic, right? And then Crystal, one of the daughters who survived, she claimed there was abuse from the father, David,
Oh.
especially towards Robert and Michael.
Abuse. Oh, that adds a whole other layer to this.
It does. It makes you wonder what was really happening in that house. Did the parents, maybe unknowingly, create this environment where all this darkness could just, fester?
It's certainly possible.
The article talks about how obsessed Robert and Michael were with, like, the Columbine shooters and James Holmes.
So those are some pretty heavy figures to be fixated on.
Yeah, they saw them as, like, role models, almost.
It's that whole idea of radicalization, isn't it? They get sucked into this world, it's often online, and these extreme beliefs, they take root, especially when there's a sense of isolation or injustice.
And in this case, it seems like all that violent content they were consuming, it just fueled their descent into, into this darkness.
A downward spiral.
And it wasn't just about, like, watching violence. They wanted to participate. The article says they actually had this plan to kill their whole family and then go on a killing spree across the country.
Wow, that's ambitious, to put it lightly, and incredibly disturbing.
They thought body count was, like, the measure of success.
It's that desire for notoriety, They wanted to be infamous. It's like a twisted reflection of our obsession with fame, even if it's for the wrong reasons.
It's like they wanted to make their own horror movie, a real-life one, with them as the stars. And they were serious about it. They planned everything out.
What do you mean?
Robert started buying all this stuff online.
Yeah.
Weapons, ammunition, body armor, knives.
Oh, wow.
He was getting ready. And then a huge shipment of ammunition arrived.
I see.
That seems to have been the trigger. It pushed them from just thinking about it to actually doing it.
It's almost as if that delivery, it was like a ticking time bomb. Like it forced their hand,
Oh, yeah.
made it all too real. It really pushed them over the edge, didn't it, that delivery? And that brings us to, well, the night it all happened, July 22nd, 2015.
Hard to imagine, right? Putting yourself in that situation.
It's terrifying to think about.
Crystal just, walking upstairs, probably to tell her brothers to do the dishes or something. Who knows?
Right. Typical sibling stuff.
And she walks in on this. They were trying on body armor. And one of the brothers, he asked the other, should we do it now?
Oh, wow.
And Crystal, she has no idea what they're talking about. She just says, well, I'm here now. What do you want?
Chilling. Absolutely chilling.
I mean, in her mind, it's just a normal night, and then everything changes in a second.
And the fact that they're just like so casual about it, it's just bone chilling. That level of detachment, it's a classic sign of psychopathy, isn't it?
Yeah. It's hard to wrap your head around. Anyway, so Michael, he calls Crystal over to his computer. And then Robert, he attacks her from behind, slashes her throat, stabs her multiple times.
Oh, God.
The level of brutality is just, it's unimaginable.
It's a complete and utter lack of empathy. That total disregard for human life. I mean, their own sister.
Somehow, though, Crystal manages to get away. She even triggers the home alarm when she runs out.
Wow. What a fighter.
The article says she collapsed on the front lawn. She was bleeding really badly, holding her own intestines. Can you believe that?
Oh my God. That's incredible and
Yeah.
horrifying.
But it wasn't over for her yet. They drag her back inside. Michael tried to strangle her. They thought she was dead.
Unbelievable.
While all this is going on, Daniel, he's 12 years old. He hears everything and calls 911.
That poor kid.
That call, it's heartbreaking. You can hear him begging for help. Have you ever listened to it?
I have. It's incredibly disturbing. His fear, it's just palpable. So much desperation in his voice.
Yeah, it's hard to listen to. And it shows how manipulative these brothers were. Michael, he tricked Daniel into opening his bedroom door. He told him that Robert was attacking the family.
Oh, God.
So Daniel, he trusts his brother, right? Opens the door. And then Michael, he murders him.
It's just senseless violence.
It's pure evil. And then the police arrive, and they walk into this scene, this massacre. It's just pure carnage.
What do they find?
April, the mom, she was stabbed 48 times. The younger kids, Christopher and Victoria, 7 and 5 years old, they were murdered in the bathroom.
It's almost too much to comprehend.
And David, the father, he ran downstairs to confront Robert, and they killed him too.
It sounds like a scene from a horror movie. A really, really bad one.
The only reason the youngest child, Autumn, survived is because the police got there when they did. They interrupted the brothers before they could get to her.
That's both lucky and tragic.
And it's a miracle she's alive. So the brothers, they know they're trapped, so they run off into the woods.
And they caught them, right?
Yeah, they found them hiding in a creek bed. Robert surrendered right away. Michael was caught by a K-9 unit. These pictures of them right after they were arrested. They're chilling.
What do you mean?
Robert's smirking. And Michael, he's got this blank look on his face, no emotion at all.
It's like it hasn't even hit them, the reality of what they did. That smirk on Robert's face, it's unsettling, like he's proud of it. Just a chilling reminder that evil can hide anywhere, even behind the face of a teenager.
It's a glimpse into something truly dark. And this is just the beginning. The capture, the arrests, it was just the start of this long, complicated legal process, trying to make sense of something that, well, that doesn't make any sense.
And what about those interviews they did with the brothers the morning after the murders? I read about those.
Right. They offer a glimpse into their minds. The Broken Arrow Police Department, they actually released the video of Michael's interrogation. But Robert's, that's sealed by court order.
That's interesting, isn't it? The fact that they sealed Robert's interview makes you wonder what he said. What was so disturbing that they decided to keep it from the public?
It does make you think. In Michael's interview, he's so detached, almost like he's talking about the weather. He describes their whole plan, how they were going to kill everyone, cut up the bodies, store them in the attic.
And then the killing spree.
It's terrifying. And their motivation, it's beyond messed up. They wanted to be famous. They wanted to set a record for the number of people they killed.
It's a twisted logic, isn't it? Like, in their minds, mass murder was a path to, to fame.
It's disturbing how some people are drawn to that. The dark side of true crime, I guess you could call it. For some people, it's just entertainment, but for others, it's dangerous. Like, it feeds into their own messed up fantasies.
It's a fine line, and it's easy to forget sometimes that behind every headline, behind every case, there are real people, real families whose lives are shattered.
Exactly. And in the Bever case, that becomes really clear when you look at what happened next. The trials, the aftermath, the impact on everyone involved.
The trials, those must have been incredibly intense. Intense and complicated. I mean, initially Michael was saying he didn't actually stab anyone.
Right. He claimed he only went along with it because Robert threatened him.
A classic defense, trying to shift the blame. But then things changed, didn't they?
He did. The detectives, they told Michael that Robert had confessed, that Michael was involved, that he actually participated in the stabbings. And suddenly, Michael's story changes. He admits to stabbing his mother.
Interesting. Makes you think, doesn't it?
Yeah, was he lying the whole time? Or did hearing Robert's confession, did that make him realize he couldn't hide anymore?
It's possible. I mean, it could also be that he finally felt some sense of, responsibility, maybe?
Maybe.
Yeah.
It definitely adds another layer to this whole brother dynamic. Was Michael really just under Robert's thumb? Or was he more willing to participate than he wanted to admit at first?
That becomes the central question in the trials, doesn't it?
It does. They both plead not guilty at first. But because of the severity of the crimes, Michael, even though he's only 16 at the time, he's tried as an adult.
Makes sense, given what happened. What was the defense strategy for Michael?
His lawyers, they try to paint him as mentally unstable. They say he was manipulated by Robert.
The classic nature versus nurture debate. Was Michael predisposed to this kind of violence, or was it the environment, his family, his brother that pushed him over the edge? Tough question to answer.
It is. There's this one thing from Michael's trial that stuck with me. They asked him about how he felt, about the attack, and he said he was sad because he had planned to spend the day with his younger sister.
Wow. That's heavy.
It's just so bizarre, right? This normal emotion, sadness, next to this horrific act. It's hard to reconcile those two things.
It is. It speaks to the complexity of the human mind, doesn't it? How we compartmentalize things, especially under extreme stress. It's possible to feel genuine affection and still be capable of terrible cruelty.
It challenges our whole understanding of good and evil, doesn't it? Like they aren't always so black and white.
Exactly.
So in 2016, Robert, he was facing the death penalty, and he took a plea deal to avoid it.
Interesting. Did that affect Michael's case at all?
Yeah, it did. Because Robert took the plea deal, Crystal didn't have to testify. It would have been incredibly difficult for her, obviously.
Understandable. But it also meant that Michael's defense team lost some leverage, right? Without the threat of the death penalty hanging over them.
Exactly. So Michael's trial goes ahead, and despite his lawyer's best efforts, he's found guilty on all counts. The jury recommended 5 life sentences, with the possibility of parole, plus 28 years for the attack on Crystal. But even then, there was still this debate. Should those sentences be served concurrently or consecutively?
Big difference, right. Concurrent sentences would have given him a chance at parole after 38 years. Consecutive sentences, well, that's basically life in prison.
Yeah, a huge decision. And the judge ultimately decided on consecutive sentences. Michael would spend the rest of his life in prison.
A tough call, but it reflects the severity of the crimes, for sure. But it also raises questions about rehabilitation. I mean, he was still so young. Is there any chance for someone like that to change, to become a different person?
It's a question we as a society grapple with all the time, isn't it? How do we balance justice with the possibility of redemption? There's no easy answer.
Definitely not.
What about the community? How did they react to all of this? The impact was huge. The Bever home, it just sat there abandoned for years.
Yeah.
A constant reminder of what happened.
I can imagine. A physical scar on the landscape.
Yeah, and eventually it was burned down, probably arson.
Symbolic in a way, isn't it? Like the community trying to erase that evil, to cleanse the space.
And in 2019, Broken Arrow, they created Reflection Park on the site of the Bever home, a memorial for the victims and the first responders.
A place for healing, for remembrance.
It is. This whole deep dive, it's been tough. It's a reminder that darkness can exist anywhere, even in the most seemingly normal places. We've uncovered so much. Isolation, abuse, the dangers of the internet, the twisted desire for notoriety.
And it leaves us with a lot to think about. How can we as individuals, as communities, recognize the warning signs? How can we intervene before it's too late? How can we create a world where violence isn't a path to fame, but something to be avoided at all costs?
That's the question, isn't it? And it's one we all need to be asking ourselves, not just in cases like this, but in our everyday lives. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.